We took our vintage 1987 Porsche 911 to air water. This was our second time going and our first time showing our car. You can see it. And there was a really great showing. Tons of cars. This is for the lineup for the paddock. And you'll see as we line up to go in with all the other cars and check out air water and show our car off. Here's a little more about our car and the story. This is our 1987 911 Targa. Bought it on Bring a Trailer. It's a relatively rare color. It's Venetian Blue, which is part of the appeal. It's not a color you see every day. I think it's like 4 out of 5 on the Rennbo paint buckets in terms of rareness. It's in survivor driver condition, which is exactly what I was looking for, something that we could just drive and have fun with. We've done a bunch of things to it, some of which I'll point out here. I've got what are called Biload headlights, which are originally on a 911R, and there is a high beam that's the yellow, and the regular light is the main area. These are pretty rare, so they're kind of cool to have on the car. Some other things that I've done are obviously put new tires on it, did a bit in the interior. So these are new seats, but they're original leather seats, and the leather on the original car is a better quality and thicker and has that vintage patina that you wouldn't have if it was redone. So that was a really nice thing to have. I had the dash recovered. Many of these cars have cracked dashes, so had the dash redone, took the dash out, took it to an upholstery shop, had it redone. What they do is they skin it and then they cover it in a special vinyl. So I took it to a specialized shop. And I also did the door side trims here so they match when the door closes. I also found full leather door cards and trim. Most of these are plastic, and so I went to the trouble of actually finding the actual original stitched leather. So that's a nice upgrade to have in the car. A little bit around back here we'll talk about. So the engine is very original. I have dreams of restoring the fan and making it look beautiful. I've had the top part of the engine apart, so I replaced the intake gaskets, I replaced the injectors. A little bit more on that. I'll add some video later about that process. I've got Teflon line braided fuel lines, so with ethanol fuel I won't have any trouble. I need to redo the air conditioner line, so that'll be a project I'll be tackling at some point soon, and we'll take you along for that. It's not quite full summer yet, so we're doing okay without the air conditioner connected. Basic tune-up, new ignition wires, valve adjustment, all that kind of stuff. But overall, it's really a good running car that really doesn't have any issues. So I'll show a little bit more of what we've done to it in subsequent videos. But yeah, this is our car. We've been having fun with it. We take it to shows here and there. Everyone really likes the color and the Targa top, which is cool because it comes off. I think that's one of the unique things about the car is that it's a Targa. Interestingly enough, the Targas are worth less than the coupes, which works out for me because I think the Targa is a unique look with the back window is very iconic. I think that's particularly cool about this era of cars. Also, when I was looking at this car and looking at getting a air-cooled 911, one of the things that I was thinking about is which model to get. So the SC Carrera is obviously a little bit less money, but then you're dealing with CIS, which is not quite as easy to deal with in terms of fuel injection. So this is modern Motronic fuel injection, normal fuel injectors that are electronically fired. It's much easier to manage. There's an engine computer that runs under the seat. Just really fire it up and let it run. There's no warm-up regulator, nothing else to deal with. Next step up is the 964. You add a lot of money to buy a 964, and then you're getting power steering, a lot more complicated engine and things to take care of. So this is kind of the purest form. This also has the torsion bar front end, which is kind of like the classic 911 style ride and suspension. So I think that's fun. So yeah, that's our 1987 911 Targa. Here are a few selected cars from Airwater that were interesting. You can see Porsche's personal car, which is in beautiful condition, a 911 Turbo, a custom-built car with clearly a very custom engine. I wish I knew more about this build, but you can see it's done very well. The interior is absolutely beautiful, very great finishing done on this car, even down to the gauges being custom. The paint's beautiful. You've got rally lights and the fuel cap in the center. Overall, just a really fun time and a great experience.
Do you want to tell everyone how you got this car?
Yeah, that's a good point. I should explain the story. So I've been looking at these. I actually bid on a SC, a beautiful blue SC, and it just went for more than I felt was reasonable for an SC. This one came up. I hadn't been tracking it. It just showed up. It was in the last hour, and I turned to you and I said, "Hey, it's really low. Should we throw a bid in?" And you're like, "Yeah, go for it." Which, thank you.
I didn't think you'd actually get it.
So the story is, the seller was a dealer, really nice guy. Actually, after I came to exchange messages with him and buying it, but for whatever reason, he wasn't available the last day of the auction, which is kind of the kiss of death for an auction. People have questions, they want to know about the car, you've got to be around to answer questions. So there were a lot of folks saying, like, I don't even know if this is a real deal, I don't know if it's going to happen, because questions weren't getting answered. I saw a few things on the car that led me to believe it had been cared for and loved, and one was the oil filter was the correct oil filter for the car. Two, it had a Blaupunkt radio, and it was a more modern Blaupunkt radio. Someone doesn't love the car and put those in. Those take knowing what it is, knowing that Blaupunkt is the brand of radio to put in the car. So I could tell that at some point at least, someone had loved the car. It was cheap enough to where I knew if I had major issues, I had some room to fix them, and I'm a DIYer, so I can fix most of the things myself without a lift. I'm not doing an engine out or something like that, but most of the stuff I can do myself. So rolled the dice and ended up winning it, and it was really kind of a hold the breath moment. I don't think I've ever paid that much for a car. Paying for it was always kind of an anxious thing. You know, wiring money to pay for a car, waiting for it to arrive on a transport was also an anxious moment. It arrived, it looked really good. I had someone who knew these cars come over and help me go through it, and so he was a true expert. He knew everything about them and helped me kind of validate what was going on with the engine, what its condition was, what it needed. So I wanted to make sure I had a really solid baseline, not being an air-cooled expert, right? We all have to start somewhere, we all have to learn, and I know my limits. So he was able to go through with me and do a compression test. We validated the compression was 150 almost all across the board. It's like 150, 155 all across the board. Leak down was 3 to 5%, 5% being the worst, 3% being the best cylinders. So by all means, a healthy motor. He looked at the rocker shafts and those looked good. And then we kind of just did a baseline of the things that it needed. Some of the fuel lines were aged out as 87s. They were the original fuel lines, and so that was an area of concern. There was a concern about the intake gaskets because it didn't have the smoothest idle, and I'll put in a little video of what that looked like on a data logging system, but I knew I needed to do some stuff. So I put in a lot of sweat equity in this car. I took the intakes off the top end of the motor in my driveway. I took the injectors out and I replaced them. I put new Teflon lined fuel lines in. I put new intake insulator gaskets and intake gaskets. I really kind of brought everything up to a good baseline, and then I was able to use a data logging ECU from F-Tech, and I was able to see the output of the oxygen sensor, see the car was going into closed loop, see that it was healthy, and see that everything was good. And that was kind of how I got to my baseline of making sure the car was healthy, making sure it was smooth. I chased down a bunch of vacuum leaks with a smoke tester, which is a great way to find vacuum leaks. So I just went through the top end of the motor and made sure everything was healthy, everything was good. And after that, doing the basic stuff, spark plugs, plug wires, injectors, fuel lines, all that stuff, which would be very expensive to do at a shop, but were all things that I could do in my driveway and weren't that too complicated. So I did those things, and we've been driving it since. It's, knock on wood, been really pretty good. And I think that's the thing about the Carrera 3.2 is it's a relatively simple car. It doesn't have power steering, doesn't have really much complicated. It's a basic electronic fuel injection system. So it's a very simple car to kind of maintain and diagnose. I've done some other things to it over the periods of time, which I'll talk about in some subsequent videos. I've had a bunch of different projects, reconditioning things, upgrading things, and I'll take you through some of those in a subsequent video. The thing about driving a classic air-cooled Porsche is you definitely have to know what you're getting into. It's going to be noisy on the freeway. It's going to have wind noise. The suspension is not going to be tight. It's not as fast as a modern car by any means, but you're still making more than 200 horsepower in a very light vehicle. So it definitely moves well. I think in particular what's interesting about driving this is the Carrera, the 3.2 Carrera is the last of the manual power steering traditional front torsion bar cars, which have a very unique and I would say rewarding feel in the way that they drive. Again, it's definitely a very vintage ride and drive. It's precise. It's a rack and pinion. So, I mean, you've got really precise steering. You've got a hydraulic clutch that's very easy to operate like a modern car. I know some people say the 915 is not as good. This is a G50 car because it's an 87. I think there are pros and cons to each. I think a well-prepared 915 car definitely has its merits. So I'm not one of those people that would say only get a G50 car. I really like having a G50 car because where we live, we do run into traffic and it is nice to have the hydraulic clutch. I also put a MPL slave cylinder, which is a 30% larger bore, and it makes the pedal a little more pleasant to drive in traffic while still retaining really good feel because it has additional Teflon sealing surfaces in the hydraulic clutch slave cylinder. So it's a neat product. You have to import it from Germany to get it, but that made a big difference driving around. I think, again, going back to the 915 gets a bad rap because a lot of them are either misadjusted or need to be rebuilt. Once those two things are taken care of and you have a healthy 915 box, they're light, they have a very good vintage character. But again, the G50 gearbox, you got the hydraulic clutch, it's a much more modern shifting transmission, so it's kind of what you'd more expect to be driving in a more modern car. You just get in and drive it like any normal car in terms of shifting it and operating. It drives like a modern car. That's the other thing that I really like about the Carrera 3.2 is it's that nice sweet spot where you've got modern electronic fuel injection, so it's easy. You turn the key, it starts up, it just runs, it idles well. It's got an idle air control valve. It idles, runs smoothly. You're not messing with CIS and a bunch of spaghetti fuel lines going through the engine bay, which again, absolutely no shade. The Carrera SC is a great car and has its own merits, but I really like the fact that just turn the key, it starts, it runs, it's easy to get in and just drive, but you've still got the torsion bar front end, you've still got the traditional driving feel, and obviously the really vintage classic look. So in my mind, it's kind of that balance between old and new and still having a good driving experience. It's still got the spaghetti system of heating and cooling where you've got sort of retrofitted air conditioning and you've got a bunch of levers and switches for heat and air. So it's definitely something to get used to, and it's quirky, which I think is kind of cool. It's not just your modern average car where you turn a dial and it automatically does everything for you. This is really completely almost as manual as you could ask for in terms of a vehicle. And I like that about it. I think it has a lot of character. In particular, when you're taking this on a winding canyon road, you really have to be alert. and know what you're doing and know the limits of the car and operate within those and respect it. But it also is very rewarding the way the steering loads up as you're coming out of a corner and as you're driving. So I think that, in my mind, is what I like about it. I know you haven't driven this as much because I'm still kind of getting it to a place where I feel like it's stable and good and something that I would just hand the keys over to you and trust it, because there's still things that I'm fixing and tweaking. Now that the fuel lines are done and other things like that, I would more readily hand over the keys and not worry about just driving and having a problem. But I don't know, what do you think about it?
I think I've driven it once in our neighborhood. That I have not driven this enough to have any thoughtful comments to make. It's loud. It's not a, you know, it's not going to feel like a modern luxury car where you don't hear the world around you. We don't often take the Targa top off, so I can't comment on how much that is.
It's a fun vintage car, and I think that's the appeal to it. You can take it to a show. It's definitely interesting and unique to drive. Follow along with us as I continue to tweak it, fix it, improve it, and row the gears.